Republicans blocked Democrats' efforts to pass an election reform bill. This is not the first time that this has happened. And the reason why it's able to happen, even though Democrats have a slim majority in the Senate, is because the legislative filibuster is still intact. Something that the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, could do away with if Democrats actually wanted to pass legislation. Now, none of this should be a surprise to anyone. And I'll give you some details about what we've experienced in the recent past in regard to the attempts to reform our elections. But before we do that, I want to give Don Lemon, of all people, some credit for a rant he had in regard to Joe Biden and his weakness. Let's watch.
Republicans and the former guy, mostly the Republicans who are in office right now, are going around the country and they are winning with a lie. They're able to get people on their side with a total lie, and Democrats can't get people motivated with the truth. I am going to get their attention. I'm going to make sure I have their attention. I'm going to tell them what is in the bill. I'm going to tell them what I'm selling. That is going to help them and everybody in red America and everybody in blue America and all Americans. I'm not just going to sit back and expect the news media to do it for me, because it's not our job to sell the narrative. It's our job to discuss what you are doing. And yes, part of what's in it, but it's not our job to sell your agenda for you. They are not selling their agenda. Democrats, get your butts in gear and get passionate about saving this damn country. You're not doing it. You're weak. You are weak. You are weak.
Look, Democrats are in fact weak, but that's not the full story, right? The Democrats who aren't really fighting to pass legislation that they desperately need is mostly due to corruption, money in politics, their own personal financial investments, both in individual stocks and other business ventures. There's all sorts of terrible things happening because the system is set up in a way to ensure that legislation that actually does improve your life doesn't really get passed, right? So I agree with some of what Don Lemon is saying there, especially in regard to Joe Biden. We're having a discussion about Joe Biden's agenda. And I don't really see him out there making a robust case for it. Not at all. I mean, where is Joe Biden? I mean, he's giving all sorts of carrots, all sorts of favors to the very corporate, corrupt Democrats in the Senate who are standing in the way of passing his so-called Build Back Better agenda. Like, he gave Joe Manchin's wife a job. He did that.
Yeah.
He keeps giving Joe Manchin all sorts of concessions. And has Joe Manchin committed to voting for the bill? No, he hasn't. Even with all the concessions that Biden recently made with cutting the most popular elements of that legislation.
Yeah, so guys, there's a number of indisputable facts here. So number one, Joe Biden did promise voting rights, and by the way, canceling some student debt, and we can go down the list of about a dozen things.
Reversing the Trump era tax cuts.
Right, so a dozen things that he promised and isn't even bothering to do. And then there's a super important dozen that he's kind of trying to do right now, but he's letting corporate Democrats block almost all of it. So that's a fact, there's no question about it. And I don't mind him giving carrots, like, so hey, I'll put your wife on some important board that no one else cares about, but you guys get to call yourselves elites in West Virginia and you walk around or go around on your yacht, no problem. But if you don't do what we want, then you gotta bring the sticks. But Joe Biden doesn't have any sticks. His whole history in the Senate is known as a guy who surrenders on negotiations. He gets the deal done because he goes in, usually to the Republicans, and go, what do you need? I'll give you 95% of it, and then we'll both brag about how historic it is. And so-
You guys, he ran and claimed that he would be the best president because he knows how to negotiate, not just to convince corporate Democrats to play along, but he tried to sell to the American people that he'd be the top negotiator in getting Republican lawmakers to play along. Now, in this context, Don Lemon's talking about Republicans, right? Because Republicans in the Senate were the ones who succeeded in blocking the voting rights bill. But I mean, Biden can't even get members of his own party to support his own agenda. Like, is he ever gonna be held accountable for that? That he lied and had like these delusions about how successful he would be in getting Democrats and Republicans to go along with what his agenda would be? Like, just let that sink in for a second.
No, I'm not kidding, and this is embarrassing, but I have to say it. If he wasn't lying about getting Republicans to play along with him, and I get it, lying's a harsh word, but it's political marketing. Like, oh, I'm running for office, Trump is so divisive, I'll say we're gonna unify the country. Obviously, the Republicans will never vote for anything I say, but I'll say that I'll work with the Republicans until they then, of course, never give me a single vote, and then I'll give up on it. That's a political marketing trick, okay? I can live with that. But if he actually meant it, and he really thought he was gonna get these Republicans to give him votes on Democratic priorities, that's borderline unintelligent. That's devastating. Like, you can't, that means you don't know anything that's happening in Washington. You're the president. You don't know that the Republicans aren't gonna give you any votes? We said it ahead of time. You said you'd get them. We said there's no way you're gonna get any Republican votes. Who was right and who was wrong? So, a voting rights bill. They had a preposterous negotiation. By the way, it's not just Joe Biden. They're all in on this stupid game. Cory Booker wasting his time, wasting our time, having negotiations with Tim Scott on the Republican side about police reform. You thought the Republicans were gonna do real criminal justice reform, real police reform?
Cenk.
How could anybody be that stupid?
You know what Congress did pass last year? They didn't pass justice reform, criminal justice reform, they didn't do that. In fact, the police reform bill, they've dropped it. They're not gonna pass anything in that regard. But last year, Congress did manage to pass something that no one knew about, no one was paying attention to. I covered it on the show yesterday. They made it easier for local police departments to obtain militarized vehicles and weapons from the Pentagon, as long as they claim they're gonna use that equipment to fight back against climate change. So,
well, that'll.
I'm not even kidding.
Now, by the way, guys, that's Trumpian. Remember when Trump asked whether we could nuke a hurricane? So, I mean, how preposterously dumb is that? But how are we going to use tanks with local police departments to fight climate change?
But they need those weaponized tanks in order to save their constituents when they have extreme weather events.
Absurd.
And of course, they lie about that. They don't actually use the military equipment for that. They use it to intimidate protesters. They use it. They're using this military weaponry in these vehicles to serve warrants.
Now, it's playing dress up. It's so stupid. If you want to join the military, go join the military. But we're not the occupied people of America.
I know, but my point is, Congress has no problem passing that kind of legislation.
100% right. And what does Biden do? He goes and gives a speech the other day saying we should give more funding to the police. So that's indisputable fact number 2, which is that Joe Biden is conservative. He doesn't actually want to do any of these things. He thinks, well, I mean, it looks like this is the moment where progressives are a little bit more ascendant. I'll go a little bit half-heartedly go in that direction. But does he have passion to, like, I've got to pass this. My God, we got to do something about the planet. It's burning, and I'm the president. I'm going to be known as the guy who let the planet burn. No, he doesn't have any of that. He's just like, where do I get a deal? Well, who do I surrender to? He's confused as to who to surrender to, and they won't take this surrender. So now he's just floating in the wind, just totally clueless. But look, back to Don Lemon. I love that cable news is finally saying what we've been saying for 10, 20 years about the Democrats. Of course they're weak. They're paid by their donors to surrender. So weakness is built into the party. Why do you think just naturally all Republicans are strong and all Democrats are weak? Wait a minute, Lyndon Johnson wasn't weak, FDR wasn't weak, JFK wasn't weak. The only reason they're weak now is because the Supreme Court in 1978 legalized corporate donations given to politicians. And that's it. They're paid to lose. When are you gonna figure it out?
And look, the Democrats would need to get rid of the legislative filibuster, which requires 60 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. That's why Republicans are able to block their efforts, even though they have a slim majority in the Senate. They don't have 60 senators, they have 50 senators with Kamala Harris serving as the tie-breaking vote, right? That's what the legislative filibuster is essentially doing away with, because you would need 60 senators instead of 51. With that said, to your point about weakness, Cenk, this is Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, okay? I'm gonna read you his quote about this, And then I want you to think about what Mitch McConnell would do if he were still the Senate Majority Leader. He said this: what we saw from Republicans today is not how the Senate is supposed to work.
Ooh, don't kill him, Chuck.
What is that? What is that? Why would you ever think that a single Republican, especially in this political climate, would want to vote with Democrats to strengthen our elections and to reform our elections? Republicans, state by state, are doing what they can to rig elections in their favor through gerrymandering, through voter suppression laws, all sorts of things. And is he asleep?
No.
He's not asleep. He knows. What is that garbage?
Okay, guys, I'm not kidding. I made up my mind. We're gonna get a national reporter in DC, and we're gonna get one in California, because California is so important. It's driving me crazy that there's no reporters here. So, and the reason is, somebody do some real tough journalism, okay? When Chuck Schumer says, okay, I can't believe the Republicans didn't vote for the voting rights bill. That's not how the Senate's supposed to work. There has to be a reporter that says, excuse me, Senator Schumer, are you an idiot? Name me 10 Republicans you thought were gonna vote for the voting rights bill. You can't name one. You can't possibly believe that, because we don't actually think Chuck Schumer's stupid. So, but don't patronize us and don't pretend like we're stupid. No, the problem is your party.
Yep.
You could end the filibuster tomorrow. And here's another indisputable fact. When you say that you are not going to end the filibuster, the Democratic Party says that. They're saying that in a best case scenario, that they view Senate traditions to be more important than their voters. They say, hey, look, my Republican colleagues want to block it, and I think they're more important than my voters. The parliamentarian wants to block things. I think the parliamentarian is more important than my voters. These are indisputable. I think Senate tradition, that's our best case scenario. No, it's not that I care about the Republicans, it's that my beloved Senate tradition, because we have tea and then we have crumpets, that's part of our tradition. And another part of we dress up in a certain way. And then another tradition is we have this filibuster that's almost always used to block voting rights for black people. And so that's part of our tradition. And I care about that tradition more than I care about our voters. Well, the message is delivered loud and clear. By the way, the next time you run for office, you idiot Democrats, it doesn't matter what you say.
Exactly.
Because no one will believe it.
Exactly, but honestly, Cenk, this goes beyond screwing over their own constituents. They're screwing over their own party's future, right? Because not only will they continue to fail to serve their constituents' interests, we're talking about the voting bill, like the election reform bill that mitigates the damage that's being done with all of these voter suppression bills on a state-by-state basis.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, great. But I just don't want to hear it from them. I don't want to hear the whining and the crying and the nonstop fundraising off of how terrible the Republican Party is. No party in this country emboldens the Republican Party more than the Democratic Party. They're doing it right now, and they're pretending as if they're the good guys and Republicans are the bad guys. They know that Republicans are the bad guys, but they enable it. And then they turn around and cry about it to fundraise. That's what this is about.
Paid to lose. So last thing, guys. And by the way, you want to help us hire a Washington correspondent and at California one, tyt.com/join. We'll hire right away, okay? As long as, and we always do things together. But all right, the last thing is a prediction. So now that people on mainstream media are calling Biden weak, my prediction is he's finally gonna bash someone. And is it gonna be Manchin or Sinema or Republicans? Hell no. He's gonna try to prove how tough he is by bashing progressives. Bank on it.
That's a given.
Okay, so, and he's partly doing it now in the negotiations. We had come down to 3.5 trillion. Manchin started at 1.5 trillion. Biden's saying to progressives now, you better take around 1.7 to 1.9. Well, that's almost Manchin's number. That's not anywhere near our number. And he's like, shut up and take it.
Yeah.
And so it's begun, and soon he'll come out on TV and start insulting progressives to show how strong he is. If he was actually strong, he would go after the donors, but he's not strong. So he will show his weakness by attacking the people who he thinks aren't actually powerful. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.